Dayelle. Hey, Amanda.
Hey, Katie.
Are you guys free later?
Sure.
Maybe.
Oh, fantastic. I really need some help hanging my meat curtains.
Okay.
Oh.
I'm hoping that Katie's talking about baby reindeer.
Same.
I am.
That's today on Can We Talk About?
Primary Election Day is Tuesday, June 4th. Now is the time to make a plan. Whether you plan to vote absentee by mail, in person at your county auditor's office before Election Day, or at your polling place on June 4th, it's important you take steps now to make your plan at voterready.iowa.gov. Remember, Election Day is Tuesday, June 4th. Find more info at voterready.iowa.gov. This message is presented by the Iowa Secretary of State.
Hey, Tommy. I'm just kidding. This week, we do not have Tommy. We have two special guests. We have Dayelle, which you're familiar with. She's hopped on before. Also, my co-host on the Watch It or Read It podcast. And Folktown, which stay tuned for season 2. That's coming out any minute. But the real special guest today is we have on the mic, not behind the mixing board, our very own master of editor, the one, the only, Katie Yonner. Please say hello.
Hello, listeners.
So, okay, Tommy's not here because he didn't watch the show in time, right? That's why he got X-nayed?
Correct.
All right.
Big mistake. I only mentioned it like the last 4 days that I've worked here. I'm like, have you seen Baby Reindeer?
And that's
But I
the
think
lead.
he was too preoccupied with watching Fleabag, which it sounds like he did find time for that.
Yeah, I've been begging.
To be fair, he also was away when I watched Baby Reindeer, and then he got back and I only had one episode left, so I wasn't really fair. I kind of jumped on that, and he wanted to watch it together.
I did the same thing. I was supposed to wait for Henry, and guys, spoiler alert, we're talking about the Netflix masterpiece. This has been the best Netflix show I've seen, like a Netflix original, in a very long time.
Same.
Mm-hmm.
I don't hate on Netflix shows, obviously, but this is like another level.
It's excellent.
I loved every minute. It's also the kind of show you have to watch quickly. I watched it within 2 nights, and it destroyed me, and I loved it.
It's funny that you say that because I actually had to take a break and a breather after one of the episodes because I watched it alone, and I watched several episodes, and then I got to the one, and I was like, I need a breather.
Yeah, that
the
episode
one.
4 was,
It was rough.
That was tough.
It was
That
a
was
tough
tough.
one.
So I'm just going to say, if you haven't watched it yet, I'm going to give you a little backstory. This episode will be full of spoilers. I think it's absolutely inevitable to you can't talk about the show and not spoil it. But the way that this show is kind of, I don't know, the storyline is it takes you back in time and brings you to present time so much. It switches timelines so frequently that you are kind of getting the end of the story and then the story explained to you. So don't feel so bad if you haven't seen it. But essentially, there's an aspiring comedian named Donnie Dunn. He works at a bartender in a London pub, and he offers a cup of tea to a customer, Martha, to cheer her up. Martha becomes completely obsessed with him and starts coming to the bar every day. And it kind of starts, I mean, you guys can jump in here. It kind of starts where he finds her endearing, right?
Yeah, I think he has mixed feelings. I think, obviously, we don't, at the very beginning, we don't really know or understand his character or his drive. And I think he just kind of sees her as maybe a little bit of himself in her. And so he takes pity on her.
Yeah, like she's just this really pathetic person who clearly lies all the time, and he knows that, but she also very quickly likes him a lot, and he likes that.
Yeah.
I think
he
you're right.
definitely enjoys the praises that she gives him about his looks and being what does she say? She's like, you're such a tough guy or something. There's like something she says to him, and he immediately is just like,
I think we're dealing with like so many different topics here because it feels like the show is all going to be about the two of them, right? Just like Donnie and Martha. But then you get introduced to Terry, who is a therapist, who's also a trans woman who Donnie is dating. And I mean, she's a beautifully intelligent, wonderful woman who's like not having any of his shit. She's not putting up with it. And then you have the story, unfortunately, we're just talking about that episode 4 where you had to take a break, how he gets groomed and essentially drugged and raped. And you have that storyline. Then you have the storyline of his ex-girlfriend's mother that he lives with, and like how they all kind of are interwoven into this failing comedy career. And she's just a part of that story.
Mm-hmm.
I was kind of shocked on how like the storyline progressed so quickly.
Yeah.
Like Katie said, you said it's so fast. Like you can watch a show so quickly, but like the storyline, it's like the first 3 episodes are a thriller movie. And then episode 4 is like this horrific, horrible, like Lifetime movie. And then the last few episodes are just heartbreaking.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I think that's so purposeful because there's not a lot of stories about men specifically being assaulted and not being taken seriously when they come to police with concerns.
Yeah.
And so the first episode is so much lighter, like, oh, this is pretty funny. Like you got an email that says, I just had eggs. But then you realize just how deep and dark it is and how these things can impact you for years and years and years.
Yeah. And to touch on that point too is there's a couple episodes where you see the main character, Donnie. You see Donnie going to the police station, and you don't at the point where you see this, you don't really know why he's going to the police station. And then a little bit of the story starts coming out, and then it stops and then jumps to a scene where stuff is happening. And then he goes back to the police station again. And it's like this very true, like, he needed to have actual proof and actual, like, he knew if he just went to the police station right after what had happened to him happened, no one was going to believe him. And everyone was just going to be like, well, you were asking for it and you went back. So why would we?
And doesn't he say, like, why'd you wait 6 months?
Yeah, exactly. And so, like, and I think too, like, he clearly is just prone to just terrible things happening to him because he has this like core need to be liked or loved, or like he wants to be a famous comedian. Like there's so much drive internally throughout the whole show too. And it kind of like, it's spread out really nicely throughout each episode. Like you get little bits of all of it. But it all makes sense that like the last episode, it just kind of ties everything together. And you're just like, wow.
I agree. And there's like I mean, Katie, you finished the show before any of us. You were just like.
I watched it almost as soon as it came out.
Yeah. You kind of, I felt bad because you were like alone on this island. You were dying to talk about this. But you were like, you guys haven't watched it? You haven't finished it? I have no one to talk to about this. And then Dayelle had finished it and I had only watched the first 2 episodes. So completely, like, I felt like I was in a completely different headspace about the show than you guys were because you had seen the whole roller coaster. I'm like, yeah, this is a kind of funny, cool show. It's weird. It's quirky. And you guys were like, buckle up.
What really fascinated me was I kind of started watching it after it had been out for a little bit. So I was getting the real story stuff mixed in with the show. And at the, like, in the beginning, I didn't know it was a true story in quotes. And the fact that like the guy who stars in it was the writer and this was his life. He very specifically talks about it's not based on his life. This is his life. And so that was super fascinating. So I was watching it with also knowing this information. And then when I finished it, actually, Katie, you were the one that shared the interview with the real Martha. Because like people, of course, like the internet investigators found her.
Which was pretty easy because she had tweeted him 744 times.
Okay.
So it took the internet no time to figure out that Martha is a woman named Fiona Harvey. And Netflix could possibly be sued because I just rewatched the first 5 minutes. It says this is a true story and it is based on a true story, but some details have been dramatized. For instance, in real life, I don't know that she actually was convicted and went to jail over stalking him. So she may potentially have a case in suing Netflix, but that remains to be seen.
She also is talking about the fact that there's a scene where she basically assaults him and that she swears did not happen. That also was.
That's such a hard, okay, so all of the emails that he sends, those creepy emails and text messages where she is a very eloquently spoken woman. She's a lawyer. Like she's an actual lawyer, not a practicing lawyer because she got disbarred or whatever the heck happened to her. But all of the emails shown in the show were the actual emails she sent. There were over 40,000 of them. Like Katie said, over 740 social media posts and 350 hours worth of voicemails that they were able to listen to.
How?
I mean,
does anyone send that many?
I have been with Henry for 15 years. I don't have that. I don't have any of that.
Even at my best texting marathon, I don't think I could send that many.
I mean, it came out to like 40 emails a day. And it's just crazy how she found the time. What was going through her mind?
Yeah. It too, like, again, because we have like the real interview to kind of put side by side with the show. And then the interview when she's asked, like Piers Morgan, which, not everyone's
Piers Morgan.
Yeah, exactly. But he's asking her these questions. And one of the questions he kept asking her about were the emails and the text messages. And her responses were always so like, well, I sent a couple. And he's like,
right.
You sent thousands.
He does have 350 voice messages.
I know that he doesn't.
And it's your voice.
He doesn't.
And everyone can now hear your voice.
Unless he was taping me in the Holy Arms.
Or he just kept them on his phone.
I didn't phone him. You sound unconvinced, but
I'm not. Honestly,
I mean, what?
No. So is your point that are you challenging him to reveal this evidence?
No, I would challenge him to leave me alone.
Because you're calling him a liar, and you're calling Netflix accomplice.
I didn't use those words. I said the story and the play, the Netflix show is not true.
Just some cheeky banter, maybe.
And it's so like, and then she does bring up the fact about climbing the curtains or what?
Hanging the curtains.
Yeah, hanging the curtains. And I was like, so that was great. So that was a real thing that happened. It wasn't a creative Netflix thing. It was actually something that was said.
You know how I love the fun facts of shows. One of the creepiest ones that it doesn't sit well with me. So I don't know if this is her real email, but the emails on this show come from an address that looks like a spam account.
Mm.
But just to make the show creepier, Jacob Stallworthy, who's a journalist and a super fan of the show Lost. I don't know if you guys have seen Lost. The number sequence, her email is like MA 4815162342 at yahoo.com. Those are the number sequences, the cursed numbers from Lost.
Stop.
Really?
Like, what a weird move, guys.
And Lost and so that's wild. That's wild.
Okay, so I do want to just point off from the top. We are dealing with a very mentally ill woman. She needed help.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if that apartment kind of really represented her actual apartment.
Mm.
But
I would say it probably did.
I mean, not to infer, I'm not a therapist, but it definitely looked like the apartment of a mentally ill person.
Yeah. But here's the question too. I don't know that the main guy isn't also in a different way. He's not mentally stable either.
No, he's not okay. He's been through sexual trauma. He's dealing with his own sexuality. There's so liking something about this.
Yeah. And in the episodes, obviously he goes through that whole trying to figure out if he's actually gay because he's no longer turned on by women. And so he goes and he like hooks up with all these different guys. And like he just can't figure out like what is going on with his body. And like I can't even imagine being in that type of a position where you don't know what's happening with your body and you're so disgusted and confused. And at that point too, like he still was with his girlfriend. He's living in his girlfriend's mom's house with her. Like, and she seems so chill and such a sweet, like loving girlfriend. And you don't get a ton of her in the beginning, but then towards the end, you really see like their relationship. And like, she just was trying to understand him and he could not. He was so embarrassed and like terrified, I'm assuming, to tell her what had happened, that he just completely and totally destroyed his relationship with her because he couldn't bring himself to tell her what happened. And he just keeps going back to this guy. So like, there's also that.
I'm super interested in like what you just said, Dale. Like he's so screwed in the head and he's working through so much. I kind of applaud the fact that Richard Gadd included all of that vulnerability into the script and showed himself as that. And I do know that this started as a one-man show where like Martha was an empty stool and he would like interact with her as the empty stool. But I'm really interested to see what Katie, for those of you that don't know, Katie is an actor. So I'm just super interested in what you think about Jessica Gunning, who played Martha. This is one of the best performances. I'm not an actor, but like she said that it was hard to turn that off at the end of the day. And Richard Gadd said that there would be points where they'd be work on set and he'd have a scene with her and he would have to like stop in his tracks and realize this wasn't really happening because she was so good.
I think she deserves an Emmy. She did an amazing job. And then to see the real Martha come out in an interview and they're like identical in the way that they talk almost. Jessica did an awesome job. She's so fun to watch. It's also great to see people of different body types on TV and like she was just so like dynamic and she had so much fun. And, you know, there's times where you really, really like her and times where you feel really sad for her. And like at the end of the day, like she's portraying a real person who God knows how she ended up this way. And so like what she did was absolutely horrible. But also a part of me is like, man, this woman, like I feel horrible for her.
You know, what's interesting about you saying that too, is I was speaking to someone, a friend of mine who is British, and she was saying that someone had come forward who worked at the same bar as the main guy. And she very like vocally, it kind of just spilled all this information about the bar being this incredibly like toxic masculinity and just so much like people would come in and there was a constant like need for the owners and like the other bartenders. They would just rip apart like people coming in to buy a drink or whatever. And so Martha was not the first person that they had kind of like had like inside jokes about her. They would talk about them, you know, when they're there, when they're not there, they would make fun of them. And she didn't love the fact that this is now so popular on Netflix because she was saying that Martha is this very vulnerable and mentally unstable person. And like, you knew that from the moment she walked in the door. And she was like, she never had anything for free. She always paid for whatever she got. So like, that was a big part of the storyline, is that she's given a cup of tea for free. This waitress was like, that didn't happen. Like he kind of paints this picture of this, you know, woman coming in and like, she doesn't have any money. She doesn't want to pay. But again, like what's true, what's not true. Like this is another person who she didn't work there when he worked there, but she worked there beforehand. So how would she know that this woman had come in and he didn't? So there's like a little bit of a, you know, he said, she said.
But is that kind of what happened in real life too?
Yeah, absolutely. It did all start with a drink on the house. And I knew almost immediately, that's why so much is made about that look up in episode 1, that look up that Martha does. That is very reminiscent of what happened. I almost knew the second I'd done that, I'd made that gesture, that, something's brewing here.
But I thought it was really interesting to also see in the show, they do put that in there. They have like the guys when they're all watching
Donnie's stand-up?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like clearly, that's right. It wasn't the video camera. It was actual like the stand-up stuff that they were ripping apart. But I think like that kind of speaks to, I think he was trying to paint that picture. And I think because he has all this internal stuff with not feeling like a man or not knowing like who he is because of all the stuff that's happened to him, I'm sure that played into why he did what he did and why he liked the attention Martha was giving him. Like there's definitely a little bit where he like, in the show, he like fantasizes about her and like there's a lot of that.
He wanks off to her picture.
I wonder if he actually went to her apartment and looked through the window. I felt that was dramatized.
Yeah.
I think you're
Fair.
right.
And in the interview, that's a question that she's asked, and she's like, no, he never was at my apartment.
Yeah. I think obviously the 41,000 emails and all of these 106 letters, 46 Facebook messages, 4 fake Facebook accounts, all of that really did happen, but maybe some of the events were dramatized to tell a better story. And I wonder if Netflix will get into some hot water since they start the show saying, this is a true story.
Yeah, it's interesting that they don't base it, or they don't say it's based, like that wording. It's curious that they're very specific in like, no, this is the story.
And have you guys seen his interviews where he's like, I wanted to make sure that the real stalker's identity was protected. I didn't want anybody, he like pleaded with people to not speculate who it was online. He said that he insisted that measures were taken to ensure her identity. But like Katie said, it really didn't help.
No.
He's more concerned about how she looks. He was like, we went through such great lengths to disguise her to the point that I don't think she would recognize herself. What's been borrowed is an emotional truth, not a fact-by-fact profile of someone. Buddy.
But she acts just like her and has a Scottish accent. Yeah.
And she has very similar features.
And there's like a weird undertone to the show that, it's his real life story. He's narrating it, like we know these are his experiences. And he said, the facts may not true, but all of the emotional truth is accurate. So you do get a lot of what happened to his dad in the last episode. You learn about his dad being molested in the Catholic Church. You learn about, all these things that come together at the end. But how do you present this? Like, how did he not think that this was all going to blow up this way? Right?
And he posted like soon after, he posted a ton of stuff as the show was leading up. I like went on his Instagram profile, and like he also posted about, because a ton of people started trying to figure out who the other character was being depicted after. And so they were looking into like production people and trying to figure out like,
oh, Darian.
Yeah. And so he was kind of like, you probably read that too, where it's like, hey, like I intentionally didn't want to expose this person. Like, it's not about that. Please don't try to find this person. It's not anyone involved in, the show or the, whatever. But like, I feel like when you do that in today's world, it just makes people want to look even more because everybody is a little detective. And especially like in the social media world, like you're posting it on your socials. It's very much like, oh, don't do that. I don't know. It feels like maybe any attention is attention. So like, is that a little bit his goal as well? Like, it's still an incredible show. It's super creepy and weird, but it's like addicting, which is what you want a good show to be.
When did you think this extraordinarily traumatic 4.5 years of your life would make a great comedy drama?
Well, I'd started sort of doing it on the stage. I'd gone through some pretty bad things, stalking and stuff that probably can't discuss at this time. But
They're all in Baby Reindeer.
Yeah, they're all in Baby Reindeer. Yeah, and I got a catharsis from going to the Edinburgh Festival and actually performing these plays and exploring the themes and just getting it all out there. And I achieved sort of acceptance around them.
I mean, his stories are his stories. This is. I go into things like this where it's like, I'm not coming in with the red pen to be like, well, this didn't happen, because this is his artistic license to tell his story, right? Like, this is the vehicle he chose. Like we said, maybe up front, he could have said, this is my life. My life is a true story. Some of these things are dramatized for screen, but everything I felt was real, or something to that effect. And I think he kind of did. But to your point, Katie, when he says, or when Netflix says, like, this is a true story, you never see that on things. This is either based on the facts of a true story, or, this is loosely based on a true story. This is based on the fact, just to see, like, in bold lettering, this is a true story.
Yeah.
That's a little tough to not sue if I were somebody.
It's funny you say that too, because I think of like Lifetime movies, like every single like crazy
Dale, every
story.
single minute of that is true. Don't you dare.
Where it's like, like you hear all these huge headline stories. There is always, and there always will be a Lifetime movie that comes out after something crazy happens. And most of the time it's like horrific stuff. Clearly, like that is very much Lifetime's realm. But like with Netflix, they're kind of like changing the way the normal. I mean, I don't know. Like, I can't think of other networks that have done stuff like this. Like, Netflix is.
They're always pushing the envelope. Mm-hmm. And I'm curious what you guys think about this. What do you think Fiona had to gain in taking an almost hour-long interview with Piers Morgan? Like, what was her best case scenario? Because I have theories.
I truly think she's so ill. Like, if the person depicted in the show, if Martha version Fiona is accurate, I think she is so unwell that she believes her lies. I think her taking that interview was her like, well, they have to believe me. It's the truth. Even if she knows it's not, I think that she wanted to show the world, like, no, I never did that. I would never do that. This is me. I'm normal. Like, he's the sick one. He's the one that's obsessing over me, making this whole show about me. Like, I'm normal. I'm not in the limelight wanting to tell everybody about this crazy story. I'm normal. I'm just a wee little lawyer, just trying to live my life. I just feel like she's not as calculated as she thinks she is. But she thinks she is like got her shit on lock. Our poor girl's loose in the wind. She had no idea.
I agree with you 100%. I think when you watch the interview, you kind of see her start to unravel a little bit, but in the sense that I think she starts to get confused as to what she said. And she tries very carefully to not, like, she says different answers to things. So like, she's clearly, it's like that whole saying, like, you don't have to remember the truth. So like when you tell so many lies, at some point you're going to get caught because you cannot possibly remember every single lie you've ever told.
And he asks her such straightforward questions like, did you email him? Oh, maybe a couple times.
It's so funny too, because she's so straight when she does. She's like, oh, just a few times. And you're
what
like,
a weird question. Why would you ask me that?
And do we think that she really has a lawyer boyfriend?
No.
Do you currently have a boyfriend?
Yeah.
He's a lawyer?
Yeah.
In London?
Doesn't matter where he is.
How long-
I'd
how long-
rather...
No, I understand, but how long have you
5
been...
years, 5 years. I didn't lunge at him across the bar. I didn't sexually assault him in a canal. I didn't go to jail.
I understand.
So,
And it's clearly a very complex situation.
I didn't say
But that it
that.
doesn't mean you did the more serious things.
But she believes she has a lawyer boyfriend.
Exactly. Which then that is her reality. So who are we to say that that's not really what's happening? I think too, like, she goes into that whole story about her employer where she's like let go from her job, and she has her own version of the story, and that is her truth. Yet there's like actual paperwork filings of like what happened, and she's like, no, that's
It's
it.
not good for you, girl.
But she's so defiant. She's like, no.
I kind of believe her sometimes when she's talking. I'm like, oh my God, she like really believes this. She must, it must
She's
be
so
real.
convincing.
Yeah.
There's parts of the interview that are so convincing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's extra confusing because, like we're saying, like parts of the show were dramatized.
Primary Election Day is Tuesday, June 4th. Now is the time to make a plan. Whether you plan to vote absentee by mail, in person at your county auditor's office before Election Day, or at your polling place on June 4th, it's important you take steps now to make your plan at voterready.iowa.gov. Remember, Election Day is Tuesday, June 4th. Find more info at voterready.iowa.gov. This message is presented by the Iowa Secretary of State.
I think she knew about the Fringe Fest play and she didn't think too much of it, hoping it would just die down. And then when this Netflix show blew up, I think she saw a lot of money being made off of her and she wanted a piece of the pie.
Great point.
I think the only reason she did the Piers Morgan interview, because there is so much evidence, is because she's hoping she has a good enough case to get some money out of this.
Oh, absolutely. She even talks about...
She is a lawyer, so
Yeah.
I mean...
And Pierce asks her like how she found out, because like the whole thing is like she didn't know anything about this. She didn't know none of this. She didn't know about it. And he like asks her, if you didn't know about any of this, like how did you know like this was about you, and like who got in touch with you to tell you like, oh my God, this is you? But that's crazy, because why would someone think it's you when you're saying, no, that's not me at all. That's not who I am. And it was like a daughter of a friend. And he like tries to push her on it. And she's just kind of like, well, they told me that and you're like,
She has all these made up friends she's constantly talking about.
So sad.
I know.
It's like
It's
really
so
sad.
sad.
it's really sad.
I'm going to just say this because I've put myself in this situation before where a person that you have such great empathy for is clearly crossing lines, but you feel so bad for them that you allow them to continue to cross those lines because you're like, they don't mean it. Like, oh God, their lives is so hard. Like, you know, I've been in this situation, especially as a bartender. I put myself in some really horrifically stupid situations because I didn't want to hurt someone's feelings. And when the cop says to him, like, why did you wait 6 months? My initial reaction is like, yeah, what a freaking idiot. Like, how do you wait 6 months? I have done this. Like, you think you feel so bad and you're like, it's harmless. It's harmless. But then you have Terry's point of view, who's like, this is not harmless. And him being like, well, I told her I wanted to have kids. That's why it would never work between us. She knows as a therapist, you're furthering that narrative in her head. If she thinks you broke up with her, she thinks that there was a relationship to begin with.
Right. And so she can get you back.
Exactly. It's like, and I get why he's doing it. He feels bad. There's some empathy inside of him, especially now knowing everything he went through. He has that. He just wants to he sees that she's sick and he wants to help her. But I'm just going to say this scene like haunts me still. When she shows up to that cooking class in his house, that is like a jump scare without a jump scare.
Yeah.
I audibly gasped. I was like,
The scene that really gets me is when she waits outside his house in the rain, in the cold,
God,
for weeks and weeks and weeks on end.
And then she goes catatonic. Like, it's so sad because she's so unwell. But that kind of also, if he was never in her house, that whole, he wipes her nose,
Yeah.
puts her in. in the car, drives her home, makes her tea, and like he can't find a clean cup because her like kitchen is like full of like mold and like
garbage and everything.
Maybe this is dramatized, but also like it feels probable for this poor woman.
Great.
Or maybe all of that happened, but he didn't come to her aid. And he didn't want to portray that version of himself on screen.
Yeah, I've heard a couple opinions say that he tried to make himself seem like he never did anything that would make him look poorly in the viewer's eyes, which if you watch the show, it's true. But I also wonder, like, does he just also see himself in her? You know, as much as, you know, obviously they're two very different people, but I think like he's gotta have some really dark and scary stuff on the inside. And you see this woman who clearly has a lot also going on in the inside. And it's almost like he wants someone to be what he is to her for him. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like,
oh, yeah.
He needs that. He needs a person like him for, and, you know, obviously he definitely uses his, you know, when he's dating the therapist.
When he's dating
like,
Terry.
Yeah. Like it's clear that he kind of, like, he specifically dates her because she's trans. And so, like, it's like this, he didn't think he would actually be into her. And so, like, that's why he dates her, because it's an easy, like, let me just figure out what's going on with me kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then realizes, like, wait, I'm in love with her. Like, I'm feeling, but he doesn't know that he's feeling those things. And so, like, that's another struggle through. And he, like, clearly, like, pushes her away.
Another one of Amanda's weird fun facts. So, you know, how he only dates Terry in, like, places he's not going to see anyone. Right? Like, and then she convinces him to go to a club that she goes to. And it's actually a very famous club in London. I'm probably going to mess up the pronunciation. I apologize to all of I wish I had friends in London, but I don't.
Yes, you do, Liz.
I have Liz.
Liz.
The Royal, I would pronounce it Vauxhall Tavern, but it's Vauxhall. It's like a very, very iconic. They actually just use this location for All of Us Strangers, starring Andrew Scott and Paul Mescal, and Jessica Gunning, who plays Martha. They also use this as shooting location. She was in 2014's movie Pride. I don't know if you guys saw that. It's really wonderful. It's about a group of gay activists who set out to help during the 1984 miners' strike. It's really good.
That sounds incredible.
Sounds really good. I haven't seen her in anything before this.
I didn't even realize it was her until I was pulling up my notes for this. I was like, oh my God. She's just so good.
I would love to see her in something else just to see, because, like, she's an incredible actress. Like, the fact that she got this character so spot on is incredible. And, like, I wonder, like, did she know, like, did Richard give her something to base the character on? You know, like, or did she just come up with this and it's so close to the real Martha? Like, that's, I don't know. It's wild.
The actress that plays Terry talked about that scene about when Terry gets beat up by Martha, like how traumatic that was. That scene in itself, but she was apparently, she'd experienced violence like that before. So she had to cry for 10 minutes straight when they did that take. But, like, that was horrific. Like, horrific. Even watching, like, I had watched a TikTok about the show a couple days ago, and they, like, talked about that clip. And if you watch it back, like, the facial expressions on everybody are so spot on, because sometimes in things like that, like, a person's kind of in the background and they're not part of the scene and they're, like, not really experiencing it, but you can tell all three of them, including the people from the bar that are trying to jump in to help, everybody is, like, horrified. Like, not only get this woman off of her, but, like, she is going to hurt somebody. Like, I think they all thought, like, she's going to kill somebody tonight. Like, if we don't stop this.
She snapped.
She's like the coffee shop scene.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, so freakish.
Which really speaks to the actors.
Yeah, the acting. Like, not only is it a really interesting story based on true events, the acting is just so good. And I've only been to London once, and I saw a little bit of theater there. And I just feel like British actors really go there, which I'm sure you'll talk more in the Fleabag episode too.
Mm-hmm.
There's just like, they don't hold back. They're so real. It's so raw. Watching this on screen, I didn't see any acting. I just saw like people.
Yeah, she's incredible too. Her name's Nava Mao. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. But she was a legal assistant for immigrant survivors of violence. And then she worked as a peer counselor in advocacy work for LGBTQ survivors. And then in 2019, she was the lead actor, director, and producer of Waking Hour, where she stars as a young transgender woman who kind of goes through this like very similar crazy situation. And you don't like, first of all, love the fact that they cast the right people in the right roles for this show. 100%. Like, you have a beautiful transgender woman who can not only play, is an incredible actor, but also can go to the places you have to go to mentally because she's lived it. Like, this is no new story to her. She's been through this.
Yeah, she's pulling like real.
Yeah, and like
yeah.
I find her fascinating. Like, she's so cool.
She's stunning.
She's only 32. She's gorgeous. Are you kidding me?
Like,
she is crushing it in life.
like every time she came on screen, I was like, wow, she's just like, she takes the whole scene. Like, she is the focus.
She looks so hot in that trench coat. Like, I just want to look that hot in trench coat and heels. Like, she's so like business, but like stylish.
It was so nice to also have just like a sane character in the show. Like, she is the voice of reason, who is the one who really calls them on it. Like, you are enabling this woman to still be in your life, in a sense, until things really spiral out of control.
Completely out of control.
She does try to stay by his side, but I think like he obviously does not help the situation. And there is a point where like you have to kind of make a decision if you want to continue to try to fix a toxic relationship, or it's just time to close that.
Also, his freaking coworkers at the bar suck ass. Like, he shows them the email and they send her an email back. Like, are you? No wonder you're the person that your friend knew says this is such a toxic work environment. That is so dangerous. She latched onto that.
Oh my God. Yeah, she did.
Mm-hmm.
Well, isn't that like,
it made things 10 times worse.
She gets that. And that's when she like meets him after he's like on his way home. And that's when that whole scene happens where she takes
Throws
advantage
him up
of
against
him.
the wall. Oh my God.
I never took it up the bum before.
But for you, I take it at the chuckers.
God, the voice.
And she's doing the tag. I've never seen the game tag be so terrifying in my life. She's like, tag it, tag it, tag it. Oh. Now that we won't be able to sleep tonight.
I just thought of this. She also beats up the ex-girlfriend.
Sure does.
You remember that?
Oh, yeah. And after harassing his poor parents.
Yeah.
Like, calls the mom, says that he's been in an accident, says that he's going to say that the father's a pedophile to get him in trouble at work. Like, and the police are like, meh. Meh.
And this is really what stalkers do in real life. Like, if you can't get through to the person who you really want to get through to, you get through to their family. And why does he have to be the person to get a new job?
Yeah.
It seems to always be that's kind of where it goes. Like, when you are the one being stalked, you have to move, or you have to change your routine so the person can't find. Like, it's always that person. I mean, I think about like, you know, all the celebrities that deal with stalkers, and to the point of like, you know, like they're literally breaking into their homes, which, you know,
the David Letterman one. She was in his house.
It's mind-boggling that people will go to such lengths, and it's always people like that they don't actually know. It's like an image of this person that they're just so obsessed with that they have to have, and they go at such insane lengths to get to them. But like, I mean, again, obviously, stalking is something that comes from people who are not in the right mental state. Like, this is not a normal person thing to do. What is normal,
She
right?
has no
like,
boundaries.
Exactly.
She doesn't know what a boundary is. And
exactly.
the last episode kind of, I don't want to say ties loose ends, because it doesn't. It ends very ambiguously, and I know that that's on purpose. They did that on purpose, but he ends the episode where he stops in this pub, he listens to the voicemail where you find out why Martha calls him baby reindeer. And it's because he looks like her stuffed animal that she had when she was a kid when her parents would fight. And it just, you know that she's supposed to be the villain, but like we had talked about this whole episode, it's just like, what's the first thing we all just did when we heard that? Oh my God, that poor fucking girl. And it's just, it's so, I don't know what's right or wrong here. And I don't think that there is a right or wrong stance to take on this, because it is so, it's not black and white. It's a very gray area. But I kind of like the fact that he like orders the drink, realizes he doesn't have his wallet. And the bartender feels bad for him because he's crying because he's just heard his voicemail, and gives him the drink for free, mirroring that first encounter he had with her. I mean, it's very lovely that the last episode doesn't even feel like the same show as the first episode. Isn't it weird?
Yeah.
They're like two different universes. Like, I don't know. What does this fall on? I think it falls under a black comedy. Yeah, it's a British black comedy drama thriller. That's a lot of titles.
Oh, that was something else. Just you saying British black comedy, or just the one of the things that Real Martha talked about is the fact that the girl who plays her isn't Scottish, or is Scottish, and she's not Scottish. I can't remember like which part of that, but she was like so stuck on the fact that like, well, I'm from this part and she was from a different part.
Are you kidding me?
No.
So Jessica Gunning she was born, she's not Scottish. She was born in West Yorkshire, England.
Yeah. So that was the thing, is she was saying that like she doesn't like, she's not Scottish. Like, so she doesn't even know. Like, trying to make that as like see, we're totally different.
Obviously.
Yeah.
Duh.
Not the same person at all.
Oh gosh. Such a crazy show.
It's so bad. Like, that us as a culture would be like, this is like a really dark, sad story for a million reasons. I find it so goddamn entertaining. It's so good.
I'm glad it didn't happen to me, but I am very entertained watching it happen to someone else.
True
story. Yeah, and there's like, I mean, it's only 7 episodes, and I think the longest episode is like 49 minutes. But most of them are like fall between like 30 and 39 minutes. They're short, very short. But I will say the takeaway that I have from this show, to kind of, like put a bow on this, is it just kind of further proves my point whenever people ask me, why do women like true crime so much? And this is one of those shows where men and women, this isn't like a Netflix sensation like Bridgerton amongst, all of us that love romance. This is, everybody's loving this show. Men are loving the show. Women are loving the show. But there's something to be said about seeing the worst in people. It almost feels like getting prepared for bad things. Like, whenever people are like, how can you watch Forensic Files? I'm like, because I've stopped on the side of the road with a flat tire at 1 a.m. and I've let a strange man drive me to a gas station at 1 o'clock in the morning and thought, what a nice guy. This is great.
Definitely not going to murder me.
Perfect. And when you watch shows like this, it's kind of like, okay, that's what could have happened, and that's why we won't be doing that again. Mm-hmm. There's like a solace in like preparing yourself for all of these insane things that could never happen to you, but they may one day. You may be in that situation. And this show, I mean, this is probably the furthest stalking goes, before somebody, unfortunately, is another true crime story we hear a lot is a woman was stalked and eventually gets killed.
Mm-hmm.
Man was stalked, eventually is killed. And I think this is kind of that all the way to the right part of being the worst thing that can happen to you, but teeters somewhere in that like soft, fuzzy, like, oh, it's harmless. Yeah. And I think they do that really well. So a lot of people can see themselves relating to this. Like, oh, yeah, I had a bar customer who would never leave me alone and blah, blah, blah. Oh, yeah, I had an ex-boyfriend that stalked me for like 2 months and we all just like giggle and laugh it off. Mm-hmm. But it's so much deeper than that. And I think this show does a really good job of showing that like these are real people. This is not a fictional story-ish. Yeah. And these things really happened and nobody was there to help anybody. Nobody got Martha mental help.
No.
Nobody got him the help he needed. He needed to be in therapy right away after everything that happened to him. And probably if he had been able to deal with those feelings, which is very hard to do, I'm sure he didn't want to talk about that himself, but had he been able to work through that before this, maybe he wouldn't have given her so much leeway. Maybe he would have been able to draw that boundary because he didn't know how to draw a boundary because he was like, I keep letting Darren do whatever he wants to me.
Yeah, you know what I wonder?
Not seeing himself as a victim and probably very similar to Martha.
I wonder too, like when you're in a situation, it's very different than people who are looking in. Like if you're in a relationship that's really toxic, sometimes it's really hard to see that because you want it to work so badly. And then like your friends on the outside are like, you need to get out of that relationship. Like he's treating you like garbage, whatever it might be. And in a situation like this, like he was so far in all of these different elements of his life that like
craziness. Yeah.
I don't think he could see any other reality. Like this is my life. And this person, like I wonder if that's a little bit of it as well. It's easy for us to like look at this and be like, why didn't you go to the police? Why didn't someone get her help? Why didn't someone get him help? Where was the therapist? But when you're in it, you don't necessarily, you don't know how to fix it. And so you just keep living, hoping it will stop or go away or whatever.
I think my big 2 takeaways from the show, one, if someone gives me an icky feeling, I don't have to be nice to them. There's a difference between
politeness.
being a kind. Yeah, there's a difference between being a kind person but I don't have to be nice all the time. We got to listen to our instincts because he really could have given her the tea and then she gets a little obsessed and he could have stopped serving on her, potentially. Not to blame him in any way, but just to say, if someone's giving you an icky feeling, you don't have to be nice to them. But also, I really hope that police start taking stalking cases way more seriously because you cannot live a normal life if you have a stalker who knows where you work, who's contacting you constantly. There needs to be some sort of protocol for people who are going through this.
I agree.
It shouldn't have to wait until something physical happens. I think a lot of times they're like, well, nothing's happened. Like, if he's following you, he's not touching you, he's not doing anything to you, he's just walking behind you. Or if he's just sending you letters, it's not hurting you. So come back when there's actual. And it's like, that's great.
Impossible. And like the stalking, this is according to California's penal code. Stalking, it's only illegal. But this is actually pretty good. I don't know how this compares to New York's, but this is what pops up. It's illegal to follow or harass or threaten another person. But that doesn't cover, that's just physically being near the person. And I mean, you just shared with us, someone writing you repeated letters, it feels like a ticking time bomb. Those kinds of things feel like you're just getting closer to the point where you can't fight back because it's gone too far and you're in the world's worst situation. And there's got to be, maybe now that the internet is a little bit more of an everyday. I mean, like there's whole different sets of laws now. I'm wondering if like exchanges like that can fall under those kind of laws, because you can't just be, it has nothing to do with a person being physically next to you. Like internet terrorism is a real thing. We see internet bullying like bring people to the farthest points of their depressions.
Yeah.
And I think that stalking isn't anymore just like physically being by the person. This show is a perfect point of that. Like, had those emails and text messages been enough, like that is clearly an indication of an unwell person.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need any more. Even if she never stepped foot in his bar, something dangerous is happening there, something out of the norm. Like that should at the very least be recorded into something and treated like, okay, now you have a person assigned to this case and we'll look into it.
Absolutely. Well, there's case. There was the case of the teenagers who were messaging back and forth to each other, and the girl told him to kill himself. They never met in person.
Oh,
it was only through
Yep.
messaging, and he killed himself. And she was on the phone with him when he did it. And then like try to be like, no, I didn't do that. I was doing something. And it's like, that is a perfect example of, not that that was a stalking situation, but it's like, it never got to a point that the cops would have done anything until it was too late.
Yep.
So like,
Yeah.
that's crazy.
I listen to a lot of podcasts. And let me tell you, the stalking stories you hear are just insane. And it's almost like, unfortunately, the laws prevent people in authority from taking them very seriously because they can't. Like, I would love to be sat outside of your apartment the entire night on my shift to protect you and make sure that nobody walks in there. But like, I can't do that because there is no technical law being broken here. And I'm sure there's wonderful cops out there who have done that, you know, like protected people in stalking situations, but there's too many. It's not like you could have, you know, somebody assigned to every stalking victim. And I mean, just stories that you hear are horrific. And I hope, I'm sure that there is some monetization happening here where he did dramatize the story to sell a better product. And, you know, I'm willing to believe that a lot of this stuff really did happen to him, just especially after seeing that interview. She is exactly who we saw she was on screen.
He asked me to sleep with him with a big green spot in his face one day. I said, no, I'm sorry, I'm not interested.
He asked you to do what?
He asked me to sleep with him. He said, would I like my curtains fixed? And I laughed. And he said, that's a euphemism. Do you want me to come home with you? And I said, I've got a boyfriend. I don't fancy little boys without jobs.
I'm really happy that this is a miniseries and we will not be getting a second season. And if we do, that will make me feel the massive ick. Like that's going to give me the ick. There should be no second season.
Yeah. And I was going to say too, to like add to what you were saying, is I almost feel like this is a really, like, as terrible as the show was, like the show was great, but as terrible as the situation was in the show, like people are talking about it. People are talking about stalking. Yeah. People are talking about mental illness. People are talking about this woman who clearly has. And so like, maybe this is a good, you know, like obviously it's a Netflix show. So whatever comes of that, comes of that. But I think like people are, it's kind of in your face. It's, you know, people who don't watch like true crime shows and have seen a bazillion stalker cases. This is like just a show you put on and then you're like, whoa. This is crazy.
You didn't see it coming. And
yeah,
just the we haven't even talked about this, guys. The poster is so weird.
Oh, him trapped in the little glass.
And she's just like behind it, like clutching her hands to her heart, like, oh, my baby reindeer. And like truly her, like that is so, it could go either way. Before I knew what this was, I was like, oh, this is going to be like a funny, quirky British comedy, which I love. So sign me up. I'm in. And then I read the description. I was like, well, this doesn't seem very funny.
I know. The show is so much darker than I thought.
Yeah.
Like, episode 1, I was like, oh, this is kind of fun, quirky, maybe like an offbeat love story. No.
Offbeat is something.
She's just obsessed with him. She's obsessed with his face. She's obsessed with his career. She's just so drawn in by him.
She loves his comedy.
And
it's
to
wild.
some level thinks that he's her boyfriend.
Or when she gives him the photo of her in the lingerie.
I mean, he does utilize it.
He does. And was that dramatized?
If that's accurate, good for you for admitting that, my friend. That was awesome.
Hey.
Yeah.
We're all a little weird.
Yep.
This was a really fun one. I'm glad you guys came on to do this one with me.
Yeah, this was fun.
Thanks for having me.
Katie, thanks for always making us sound great on all of our shows.
You're so welcome. It's an easy job.
Well, thank you. But I do just want to say to everybody, keep an eye out because our girl Katie, you might be hearing more of her voice someday.
Someday. Possibly soon.
Someday, folks. That's it for this week. And it's so strange because I feel like if Dayelle's here, so I feel like I'm going to say next week I'm watch it or read it, but it's not. So
would you watch it or read it? Oh wait,
would you watch this or read it? I will tell you, this would be a great book. This would be a fantastic book.
He said he had like journals or diary or something that he like based. He wrote
he
it from
100% should put this to.
You could read the 41,000 emails.
True.
I actually would love to. I'm not even going to lie.
I think most of them are pretty short. I ate egg today.
Oh, God, the extra consonants in all the words, that is terrifying alone. But I will just say to wrap this up so that Tom doesn't yell at me for missing this, go ahead and follow us on all of the social medias. We are on TikTok. We are on the Book of Faces. We're on the Instagrams. And pretty soon, we're all going to be doing some Patreon stuff. So stay tuned for more information on that. And that's it. Bye.
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 Apparently that's slang in the U.S. I have never heard that.
I have heard it many a time.
But it is meat curtains or beef curtains?
It's beef curtains. Nope,
Okay.
sorry, I lied. It's meat. It's saying meat, not beef. It corrects it. Also, I found the line from the show.
Okay, go
Donnie
ahead.
says, "What's your special dish?" Martha says, "Beef curtains."
Mm-mm. Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
Oh, God. Oh, God.
No. Okay. I'm going to delete my history on my phone now.
That's hilarious. I have to go eat Greek food for dinner. I had a chicken gyro ordered, and I'm a little bit regretting it because it's all folded up of meat. With this ziti sauce. Right on top.
Primary Election Day is Tuesday, June 4th. Now is the time to make a plan. Whether you plan to vote absentee by mail, in person at your county auditor's office before Election Day, or at your polling place on June 4th, it's important you take steps now to make your plan at voterready.iowa.gov. Remember, Election Day is Tuesday, June 4th. Find more info at voterready.iowa.gov. This message is presented by the Iowa Secretary of State.